So one of the great things about oil pastels is that they actually blend really nicely together. So now I'm going to show you how to blend oil pastels to create a tint, a tone, and a shade. We'll start with the tint. So a tint is a color mixed with white. So anytime you're blending oil pastels, you're actually going to start with stippling. And since this is a tint and I'm going to mix white into it, I'm just going to start with a light amount of stippling with the color blue I want to create a tint with. So I'm not filling in a lot, I'm just adding a little bit of stippling. And now I'm going to go in with my white oil pastel, and I'm going to use small marks to blend that blue with the white. Now I'm just using a circular motion to kind of blend it all together. But you have to start with those small marks. If you try to just do a whole layer of blue and then the white on top of it, it will not blend together as nicely. So that's where that stippling really comes in handy. I've got a nice blue tint. If I wanted to, I can go back in and add a little bit more blue. If I want it to be a darker blue tint. And there's our first tint. The next one I'll make is a tone. That is a color mixed with a gray. So once again, I'm just going to start by stippling the blue that I want. I'm taking the gray. Mixing that in to make a nice blue tone. Again, I think I maybe need a little more blue. And there's my tone. Alright, the last one is a shade. So a shade is the color mixed with black. So for the last two, I started with the blue color, the tint and the tone. This time, I'm actually going to start with just a little bit of black. Because if I try to go over the color with a black, the black is just going to overpower that color. So I'm going to start with the black instead. And then mix my color in with that. I'm going to get a really nice dark blue shade. So that is how you blend a tint, a tone, and a shade with oil pastels. So when you're blending oil pastels, there's two kind of tips that will really help make your oil pastel drawing look its best. And the first is called the rule of 3. This refers to resisting the urge to use one flat color when you're working with oil pastels. So if you're filling in a section and you're just doing one color, it's going to make your pastel drawing look a little bit flat and not as interesting as it could. So the rule of 3 refers to whenever you're going to fill in a section with one color, try to find 3 versions of that color. So for example, with this blue, I've got a light blue, more of a medium blue, and then a dark blue. And that is going to allow me to create a blue, an area of blue that has a lot more interest than just going in flat with the one color. It can also allow you to add shadows and highlights by mixing all those 3 together. The next sort of tip is to choose colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. So for example, blue and green are next to each other on the color wheel, and if you try to blend those together, it'll work pretty well. It'll create a nice sort of blue-green in the middle. And it will look good. However, if you try to blend colors that are opposite of each other on the color wheel, so something like orange and blue, you are not going to have the best results. They're going to mix together and create kind of a weird, muddy, brownish, grayish color. Like that just doesn't really look quite as good. So one more time, rule of 3, always try to find 3 versions of a color so that you can give those single colored sections some interest, and try to blend only colors that are next to each other on the color wheel, never colors that are across from each other. Okay, so with those tips in mind, let's get into the actual technique of blending these oil pastels. So I'm going to practice blending cool colors into cool colors and warm colors into warm colors. So the number one trick with blending these oil pastels is to never press as hard as you can right from the jump. Something that looks like that is going to be really hard to blend anything else into it. It's just not going to blend together so well. So the trick is to start by using small marks. You can use a stippling technique or a scumbling technique. Either way, you just want to leave space of in between your marks. So this side is going to be my extra green side, so I can do my marks a little bit closer together, have less paper showing. Then I'm going to leave more paper showing as I transition into that lighter green, which will then eventually transition into my blue. So I'm just starting by adding marks, leaving lots of empty spaces of paper so that I can then go in and fill in those spaces with the next color. And that's what's going to allow me to blend these colors together. You can always go back in and add more if you need to of any color, but that should be a good starting place. Now this is where the kind of magic happens of getting these all blended together. So I'm going to start on the far end with my dark green, and since that's going to be dark green, I can just start by going back and forth with a little bit of pressure, blending those marks that are already on the paper together. And I'll start working my way in to the lighter green section with this dark green, but I'll pretty quickly transition to a light green. So you're not actually going to blend the oil pastels with your finger like I know maybe some of you have done in the past. That gets really messy and it really doesn't actually work that well. So you're actually going to use the oil pastels to blend the oil pastels. And typically, whichever color is lighter, so this lighter green, will be the best choice to go over and start blending those things together. So now I'm getting into the blue. I need to add a little bit more blue to really see that blend happen. There you can see I've created a little bit of turquoise in the transitional area from green to blue. You can go up and down motions. You can also use circular motions, are really a nice way to blend those colors together. But just having those little dots of color already on the paper really improves how well this blend turns out. Ooh, maybe need a little more dark blue over here. And you can always go back in and even if you went in and made it really dark, can still work a little bit more that lighter color in if you need to. So it is a lot of back and forth, transitioning between one color to the other, create a nice blend. And if you want it to blend it even a little more, you can go back, clean up some of those spots. And there we go. I've got my green to blue. All right, for my warm to warm, I'm gonna go from yellow to orange to red. And this time, instead of doing stippling, I'm going to use that scumbling technique. So starting off by drawing a circular motion, leaving white paper showing, leaving space to work in the other colors that need to get blended in. Okay, so now I've got my base. Get to start blending it together. I'm gonna stick with that circular motion, but now I'm just pressing down a little bit harder and blending what oil pastel is already on my paper together. Using the lighter colors to blend the light and the darker together. Using these circular motions is a great way too to make a really nice soft looking blended surface. If you want to keep it all looking soft and impressionistic, this is a good technique. All right, and there we go. That's my warm to warm blend. Okay, now go ahead and give these techniques a try for yourselves.